Psalm 91, verses 1 and 2. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust. How do we become a resident of the secret place? Because the word dwells means to live there. He who dwells in the secret place. What is the secret place? Is it a physical location? It can be, but it's not limited to a physical location. He who dwells in the secret place, because a resident is a person who lives somewhere permanently or on a long term basis. They live there. That's where they eat, that's where they sleep, that's where they bathe. They live there. Jesus instructs us to go to a quiet place, a secret place. Matthew 6:6. A room with the door shut. Secret place. So the secret place is not a physical location, but it's one-on-one time with God, a place of solitude. He who dwells, he who lives there, not he who visits, he who dwells in the secret place, because a visitor comes in and out during certain times. If you go to a hospital, you visit a loved one, you visit someone that you really really care about. Visiting hours are from 11 to 5, 12 to 6, 1 to 7. But God's will for us is to be a resident of the secret place. See, if you live in an apartment complex and you're not getting hot water, your electricity goes out, and that stuff breaks, management is responsible for fixing those things. Now, the flip side of that is if you get behind on your rent or your utilities, your water, your heat, your electricity, your gas, if you get behind on those things, guess what? Management and the company that's powering your home or your apartment, they're going to send you a notice. Hey, you are behind 1 month's rent. If you don't pay by such and such a day, we're serving you an eviction notice. And you will have to vacate the premises. That's what management would do. But I'm so glad that God does not do that. Because His will for me and you is to be a resident. He wants us to live in that place. Guess who's the manager? He is. God is the manager. Right? And I like this verse because he goes in and he says, the second part of this verse, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High, then it says, shall abide shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Under the shadow of the Almighty. God, what are you talking about? What do you mean by this? Well, to abide means to remain stable. You're right there, you're not moving. Abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Okay, so a shadow. You cannot see a shadow in the dark. You can only see a shadow when there is light. And God is light. And in him there's no darkness at all. That's what First John says. Right? So let's take this into account. Shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Okay, so yes, you can see a shadow in the light. But when you see the shadow, that represents a presence of a person. When you see a shadow, you know that someone is there. So what Psalm 91 is saying, and nobody knows who wrote Psalm 91, because David didn't write it apparently. So people going back and forth talking about who wrote it. Shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Almighty, by definition, is someone who has complete power. That's what the word Almighty means. So now, let's look at this again. Shall abide under the shadow. Whose shadow? Of the Almighty. The one, I'm under the shadow of someone who has complete power and who is sovereign over my circumstances, over the way I perceive things, over the way I overthink on things. He has the power. He is Almighty God. When you live in an apartment complex, you're under management. And if you get behind on your rent, guess what? They're evicting you. But with God, in the secret place, we get behind on spending time with him, fellowshipping with him, communing with him, talking with him, and not only talking with him, but God also talking to us, because one word from God and I'm good. I'm satisfied. Because Jesus said it himself in Matthew 4, man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out the mouth of God. So what God says, when God speaks, I can count on what he is saying. So just like the management reserves the right to cut off your power, your water, because you get behind on your rent, I thank God for his mercy and his grace that God does not serve an eviction notice to us. But he does lovingly confront us and says, hey, you need to spend time with me. And sometimes God will make you spend time with him because he will start closing doors that you thought would never close. Also that he can get your attention and my attention. He's done that to me. So, under the shadow of the Almighty, the one who has complete power. That's who's in the secret place. That's the shadow that you see. That's the shadow I want to be under. Is one who has complete power. Woo! So God, just thank you that you are Almighty God. and that your will for us is for me and those who are listening to be a resident, not a visitor, of the secret place. Stay tuned, y'all. We got more from Psalm 91.